Who here remembers the last time they went without a car to reach their destination? Hi, my name is Noah Carter, and today I will be giving a presentation on the importance of transit in urban design. First off, my research claims. The question was, how has discriminatory government policy adversely affected urban environments? And the hypothesis was, using public infrastructure, cities can be revitalized and grow in a positive direction. The table of contents, important histories. We're going to be going over what history led to the policy decisions that Americans face today. And then we're going to be going over the decay caused by policies such as redlining and highway construction and the racism that was stirred within those policies. Then we're going to go over the role of transit. We're going to go over the research I conducted and the results shown by public transit, and then practical solutions. We're going to be going over what actually needs to happen within cities to make them viable. In 1934, the National Housing Act was created by Roosevelt along with the Federal Housing Administration. This allowed people to get loans, government subsidized loans for their housing, which then allowed them to build wealth. But at the same time, in the 1930s, discriminatory lending practices were instituted, and this was actually a term that would be later coined, and it was redlining, where they would take a red pen and they would draw out areas on the map that were considered high risk in lending, but these areas just happened to have people of color living within them, and this would cause people living in those areas to not be able to buy homes or to upgrade their homes and gain wealth through property ownership, which was the main way people in the United States would gain wealth. And then in 1953, Eisenhower implemented the Freeway Act, which created 41,000 miles of highway that would span across the United States. And then in the 1960s, McKnight, a sociologist, coined the term redlining. Redlining in highways. What is redlining and what are its effects? Redlining is when there is predatory loaning that doesn't allow people of color to get the loans they need for home ownership, and where communities would be written out of loans because of the people who were living there. And its effects were devastating. Many were unable to accrue wealth, and they would be living in poverty because they couldn't get any bank loans to help them move up. And while white people were able to get these loans and help them build wealth, people of color were unable to. And then, how did highways create division? Highways were used as a physical barrier to destroy communities. Communities would be bulldozed and run over so that highways could be created. And this created a lot of devastation within those communities, because when you have people who are displaced, where are you going to go at that point when your home has been destroyed to create room for cars? It doesn't help anybody. A lot of these areas that started to thrive despite redlining would be bulldozed, and then highways would be put on top of them, and these people's lives would be completely destroyed and uprooted because of highways. Now we're going to go over an example of DC. Southwest DC was leveled in a decade to build federal buildings. 95% of Southwest DC was destroyed, and 23,000 people were displaced because of this. And then transit was removed, which made it even worse. These communities were mostly served by a streetcar transit system. And the system was removed as these communities who were being served by it were not white, but they were rather people of color. So they didn't have much political power to keep this instated. And then cars soon took over, highways were created, and places where people were able to thrive were destroyed. And then the DC Metro was created in the 1970s, but this underserved marginalized communities, as it was mainly a way for white commuters to move in and out of the city, and they could go back to their suburban homes and then go into their uh, city life and their work there. Decay caused by policy. This is a map of redlining that has happened in the United States, specifically of Boston. We have first grade, second grade, third grade, and fourth grade. First grade would be an all-white community. There would not be a single person of color within these communities, while fourth grade would be the opposite of this. It would be mainly people of color, mainly Black communities or Hispanics, and these people would end up with very little as they were unable to incur wealth. And then we can see by the third grade marker where there is a first grade community quite literally next to a fourth grade community. And what is splitting them? It's a highway. Boston removed a lot of citizens for urban renewal. About 21,000 citizens were removed from their homes so that new buildings may be created and new highways may be created. The rerouting of the Central Transit was also very prominent within Boston. Specifically, the Orange Line was rerouted from marginalized communities into white communities. And then the Central Artery in the Big Dig. This is that project. The Central Artery is the first picture there. It was this massive highway that went straight through downtown Boston. And then we have the solution, which was called the Big Dig. And the solution was to put that highway underground, make it larger, and then cover it in green space and places for people to be. Now, this is a very interesting problem and solution because the Central Artery, it was devastating. I mean, you look at the difference between the two pictures, there's nothing good about the first one. The second one looks quite pleasant. But if we actually dig into this problem, we'll start to see that making the highway bigger didn't really solve the issue. Because what they were trying to solve was a way to get rid of congestion in their highway. And they did this by putting it under the ground, which got rid of the people problem because now people can actually use downtown and it's not just a place for cars, which is great, but it's only one step forward. But instead of actually including more in that process of making this a people place, it became an even larger highway and they just reestablished car dominance within the city because people aren't the priority, rather it's moving car traffic through downtown. Now, the role of transit is extremely important as it stirs a lot of opportunities for growth because people can support different lifestyles. A car is extremely expensive. So when you think about the economics of it, people who can't afford cars, but they can't go anywhere without a car, it just doesn't allow for anybody to earn any sort of profit within their lives. It also increases equality within living spaces as urban spaces become more accessible because people who have disabilities and are unable to drive, it's very difficult for them to move around our country without having some sort of help. While in other countries, a lot of people with physical disabilities are able to move freely because there are easier access points and better ways for people to move throughout their lives without needing to get in a car to go anywhere that they want to. It also just allows for different people to live within these spaces. When you have highways that create subdivisions and these sprawling suburbs that are just mainly white people living within them, there's no diversity. But when you have a denser environment that allows for any type of person to live there because they don't have to worry about how they are going to get to work and how they are going to afford to pay for all of the extra costs that come with a car, you're going to see a lot more diversity in those areas. Now, my research was mainly focused on the research that I conducted was a cross-sectional study, and it was between the different types of transit options, and I'll go over a few of them now. Microtransit is the first mile, last mile concept where you'll hop onto a train and then you'll hop off. You won't be directly at your destination, rather, you will ride a bike or skateboard to get where you want to last, and it provides very quick and easy way to get to that last mile step of your trek. Rapid bus transit is the poor man's metro, a direct quote from Dr. Glass of Pittsburgh. And um, this is the idea of buses acting like metro lines, but they're much cheaper. They're on set routes and they come every 15 minutes, but they don't have as high capacity. And it's just a way for cities that are building their transit options to start that process without going bankrupt. And streetcars are the tourist attraction or transit option. Streetcars used to be everywhere in America. Every little city had one. Old Ellicott City used to have one until it was torn up in the 1950s. And now it's seen as an attraction. People want to go ride these, even though they're great as transit options. They're able to move people effectively through high density areas. Then we have metro lines. These are heavy rail. These are high quality, high capacity, extremely fast at maneuvering people through high density areas, but they're extremely expensive, and a lot of cities are unable to afford the costs that go along with them. Then light rail is a little brother to the metro. Instead of being mainly underground, it is mainly above ground. It's going to be electrified, and it's going to be very similar, except it's lower capacity, it's lower cost, and it's lower speeds. And high-speed rail is the fastest and highest capacity rail you can get out there. In Europe, the European system, it is able to carry 160 million people per kilometer over there. That's a lot of people going in and out through that system. Transit orientation. Transportation must serve the community. We talk a lot about how people aren't being served and how that destroyed many communities as their transportation systems were rerouted. And these people are no longer able to get what they need. They're no longer able to get to work. They're no longer able to find places to eat. And suddenly their communities start to dwindle. And this is the next part of that. Oriented communities thrive comparatively. People understand each other, they live with each other. 60% of Americans say they don't trust their neighbors. And that is a dangerous culture to live by. If people are unable to live happily and understand the people who they live next to every single day of their lives, how can Americans understand each other and cooperate? And then the more per gallon concept. I came across this concept while I was researching, and it was a research study on the differences between a Walmart and a mixed use building, which is depicted here. The Walmart made about $900 million in sales in a year, while the mixed use building only made 11 million. But then they looked at the differences, such as cars um, to acres. You want the car that has the best mile per gallon, and that's the same for buildings. You don't want the car that has the biggest, heaviest engine that needs the most gas. You want the car that's lighter and allows you to travel 30 miles on 1 gallon. It's the same with mixed use buildings. While this mixed use building was only 1 acre, the super Walmart was about 20. And there was a huge difference between that. The massive Walmart corporation made only 900,000 in dollars per acre on their lot, while the mixed use building was able to make, well, $11 million on that 1 acre. There's a huge difference in actual economic status between the two, and the mixed use building is winning by a landslide. This leads us to solutions. We need to have mixed use areas. Not every transportation is going to be a one size fit all. Every single type of transportation is crucial. Cars shouldn't be removed. Nothing should be removed. Every single part of our transportation system has its place, and every single part needs to be used correctly. There's no one size fits all to transportation. This is a flow chart giving an example of what transportation actually does to us. It creates a better economy, which allows people to live different styles. It creates different lifestyles. It creates equality by people being able to choose how they want to live. And then when you have these beautiful living spaces with all these other places being connected, you soon have a thriving system and people are living happily however they want. This is another quote from Dr. Glass. It's neighborhoods, not subdivisions. It's people, not cars. And it's transit-oriented development. Thank you. Do you have any questions?